panel meeting for July 13th. And just a little reminder that we're live streaming this meeting and video recorded for the public. And just to check, is there any late items from anybody? Okay, not seeing any, and everybody got the agenda. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Kevin, seconder, Ken, all in favor? Great, okay. And we have one set of minutes to approve tonight. That's from the June 23rd meeting. And so is there any issues with those minutes that anybody wants to report? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Angela, seconder, Ken, all in favor? Great, okay, get that part over with. Wonderful. Okay, so we have one presentation this evening for a property on Island Highway North, and City Planner Peyton Carter will present the project. Go ahead, Peyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, everybody. DP 1300 is an automobile dealership comprising of 1,987 square meters of total floor area. The subject property is zoned mixed-use corridor and is designated as residential corridor in the city plan. This automobile dealership is permitted as a site-specific use on the site. The subject property is located on the north side of the Island Highway and south of the intersection of Victoria Avenue and 106th Street. The subject property falls within Development Permit Area 8, so 4 main character, and the General Development Permit Area, General Development Permit Design Guidelines apply to this development. There are a number of variances for this development. The first is to increase the maximum allowable front yard setback from 6 meters to 16.43 meters. A variance is also required for the proposed vehicle display area between the front face of the building and the front property line, and includes some parking within the maximum front yard setback. And lastly, the zoning bylaw requires a minimum building height of 2 stories above grade. Because the proposed building is not comprised of 2 full stories, a variance will be required there as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take questions after the applicant has presented as well.
Great. And who's going to be presenting this evening?
Okay, are we on?
Yep.
There we go. It's Alan Lowe from Alan Lowe Architect. We also have Dawood online as well as Jim Partlow online. Jacob is online, and Scott from Appleton Martin is here with me as well. We were surprised to come into an empty room, but that's okay. It's nice to come to Nanaimo and make this presentation. As Peyton has mentioned, this is a car dealership on the Island Highway, bounded by 106, 107, and Victoria. Can we share a screen somehow? Dawood, could you share a screen? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, next slide. Okay, as everybody would know, driving along the Island Highway there, this property is already the Nanaimo Nissan dealership. It already has cars and buildings on the site, and the owner has requested that we build a new dealership for them so that it could meet the new corporate guidelines that are required by Nissan Canada, and to make the site, to beautify the site so that it could be used for the dealership in the future years to come. Here you've got the slide showing the view going north. Next slide. This is one slide going the other way, going south. Next slide. This is along 107th and Victoria. Next slide. So these are just context. And Victoria and 106th, where there is a very shabby fence line hiding some garbage containers, etc. Next slide, please. This is the existing aerial photo of the site. As you can see, the present dealership is actually on the corner of the Island Highway and 107th. There's also a service station pretty well towards 106th, And you will see on this aerial photo that we are dealing with 4 street frontages. One is the Island Highway, one is Victoria, which is actually bounded by the single-family dwellings along the other side of the street. We have a shopping center on the south side and some light industrial on the north side. Next slide, please. This is our proposed site plan. In order to keep the dealership in operation, we had to look at how to place this building on this site. The parameters that we were dealing with was to ensure that there was adequate presence of this building along the street frontages to deal with, and as you can see, with any other project with smaller lots along these 4 frontages, any of these frontages could have been a front yard, any of these frontages could have been a backyard, and they could have been side yards. What we've done is, according to the definition of front yard and all that, the Island Highway North is the front yard that we're using, and even though that you have requirements within the zone that there's a minimum and maximum setback for buildings at 3 meters and 6 meters. We are actually putting this building a bit further back from that street frontage. To have the building butt up right against the Island Highway would probably not be the right thing to do with this building either. And we didn't want any of the sides or the front or the back to be a back of the building. So we had to try to design this so that it would fit the site appropriately. With the showroom facing the Island Highway, as well as you're coming north, you can see the showroom from 107th. We had to set the building back where we have it on the site due to the fact that the existing building already is located at the corner of 107th and the Island Highway. We will be demolishing the service area while we build this building, and we're also going to be adding underground parking in order to allow the dealership to have adequate space to store cars when they get more inventory. Next slide, please. As you can see that we are asking for various variances with various car dealerships and various car dealerships that have recently been built as well. Car dealerships actually have display or parking in front of their dealerships, and you can see that the Mitsubishi as well as the European specialty cars along Kenworth there have a similar configuration as do the Laird Wheaton and which one was that one? The Audi. Next slide, please. When you're looking at the variance that we're requesting for a 2-story building or a single-story building, by building code, in actual fact, this is a 2-story building. The portion that fronts the building where the showroom is 1 story, but it's a 2-story volume. We always get into this situation with this zone where they say that you need a 2-story building and we have to come for a variance because this is not fully a 2-story building, but massing wise it actually is a 2-story building and meets the meets the building code interpretation of a 2-story building. Next slide, please. This is just underground parking. Next slide. A larger floor plan showing where the showroom is. We have a service drive-through at the front of at the top of this diagram here. We have service bays that are behind, and then the ramp behind that. Next slide, please. Second floor, it's a second floor mezzanine with some office spaces, administration. Next slide. Roof plan, next slide. Materials. The materials on this building are actually storefront windows with aluminum composite metal panels. We have various colors of ACM panels from silver metallic to red and gray. We also have the metal cladding around the back of the site, as well as having the tilt-up panels, which will be painted Nissan gray. We feel that the various materials will actually break up the massing of the building and actually creates a nice composition, and also meets the corporate requirements that NISA Canada has for their new builds. Next slide, please. Just some elevations showing the entrance of the Nissan with the red Nissan letterhead, logo head, the metal panels along the side there, and showing how there are different levels of the buildings, so that breaks up the mass. Next slide, please. And then the other two elevations showing you the tilt-up panels at the right-hand side of the west elevation, which is our service bays, our drive-through bays where we have alignment racks, etc. And then we have our service drive-through on the east side there, where customers bring their cars into there. They leave them there for the service department, and the service department drives it around the site to bring them into the service base. Next slide, please. Just a perspective of what you would see. You would see the building further back on the site instead of in front, because the existing building is actually located in front of the site. After this building is built, the building in front will be deconstructed. Next slide, please. Just another aerial view of what we're looking at. Next slide, please. Perspective of the building as we go north on the Island Highway. The signage for the Nanaimo Nissan will stay in the location that the existing signage is located. Next slide, please. This is the image of it coming south. Image of the building along Victoria Avenue. You can see the trees that are being planted along the boulevard there, and taking into consideration that there is residential on the left-hand side of the street. Next slide. And then this is another view of the building from the other corner. Next. And then just some various images of the building from various viewpoints. Next slide, please. I'm going to leave this up to Jim Partlow, who will be unmuted so that he could have a discussion on the landscaping, please.
Okay, thanks, Alan. As Alan explained, this is a car dealership, so it's important to get the landscape right and allow the function of the dealership while still providing some articulation and beautification of the site. So the main element is the trees around the perimeter of the site, and these are spaced according to the Nanaimo standards. I think they're about 15 meters on center, and we go with the columnar tree. There actually isn't a lot of room between the Island Highway and the parking area to plant, but the best tree, certainly for the dealership and for the look, is columnar trees in that area, and we've extended them around both side streets. The thing about that is, as you get closer and you can get views in, you got a nice window into the showroom and what you might be looking at as you drive by. But as you approach it from the oblique angle, you get almost a wall of trees, which is actually quite effective, and works on those two principles. And then the rear is single family in the back, so that's a larger tree planted along there. And we were asked to provide a full plant list, so you can refer to that if you're interested in the detail. But I think we've got columnar red maple, red Armstrong in the front, or gold, Armstrong Gold, red on the side, and red Sunset maple in the back. We might have used Autumn Blaze. The two green strips in the interior of the site are rain garden drainage swales, and those are planted with Carob subnuta, sedgegrass, I think, no, slewgrass. And then there's another area, a couple planters adjacent to the maintenance end of the site, and I think we had Coosa dogwood in there with some native plantings underneath. The screen or the articulation along the front of the property is boxwood heads, something that can be maintained not much more than bumper height. And we've articulated it with kind of stops on either side of the tree planting, and then some triangular accents colors that we were going to do that in planning, but it wasn't going to be sharp enough to convey the triangular shape. So those are in black lava. And then between them, there's various grasses and liriope and euphorbia, and just to provide some interest. So there's lots of little interest, but to scale the whole block, when you add them together, you get a combination of detail, but an appropriate scale for this size of facility. And then at the rear, where we want, and to provide some separation, we've got Portuguese laurel for the screening in there, wintergreen for the ground cover, and I think Mahonia we used around the maintenance area, and kinnikinnick in there. So I think the only thing is we're still waiting on the streetscape information on the surrounding streets from the city. So, this is our intent, our recommendation, but depending on what the city comes back with, may have to make some adjustments. I think that's it. Thanks.
Just a couple of slides just to share.
Okay, Jacob, can you share our development permit drawings there, please? Okay, let's start off here. Oh, perfect, you're right at our key plan. So here's our key plan, which shows all of our servicing. We've gone through it for the development permit package. Let's go flip over to, I think it's sheet 4. Jacob, we'll go straight to the servicing.
Yeah, that should be the surfacing.
There you go, perfect. So bottom left-hand corner is actually where our storm connection is. So two requirements for stormwater management based on the City of Nanaimo's engineering standards. First one is retention. So retention on this site, we're doing a combination of the landscaping areas, which are around the perimeter of the parking lot. We have the rain garden, which is in the 2 stripes there. That Jim had just pointed out. And then the third component of the retention is drain rock with our perf pipe system around those 2 legs there. The second component of the stormwater management is the detention component, and that's taking pre and post development site characteristics, which would be, we would assume that this would be fully treated, so even before the original dealership was put into place. We calculate what our storage is, and in this case, the site is best set up for us to do upsized stormwater pipes in the ground. So we have a couple different legs here. That's one where Jacob's pointing it out. And we run up the other side and then up to there, and then we connect any surface drainage that doesn't infiltrate into the file swells. We got some catch basin leads over there. So we'll just flip to sheet 6, and that's all of this is all the stormwater calculations that we go through, and you can see we now show the highlighted landscaping area that we're utilizing for the retention component.
And that's our presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe you can stop sharing the screen then. That's great. Excellent. Okay, does anybody have any questions of staff regarding this project? Angela?
Hi, thank you, Marie. I just had a couple questions through the chair, and I probably know the answer, but I was just looking at the zone, the Core 2 zone, and it was talking about in section 9.2.2 about the residential component of the Core 2, and I wasn't sure if, because this is a site-specific use in this zone, if considering a residential component wasn't something that should be considered. That's my first question.
Go ahead, Peyton.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, through Madam Chair. Yes, Angela, you're exactly right. Because it is a site-specific use in the zone, but also because the use is existing, adding that mixed-use component wasn't a factor for this development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, question number 2. I was just curious if the city is planning on requiring upgrades to the sidewalk along Victoria Ave. I see that there's no sidewalk on the northern side of the road. So through this development, would there be a requirement to upgrade and install sidewalks? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Marie. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, so it definitely was something that came up in the referral process, and some frontage works will likely be required here as part of the application. But through the comprehensive letter response that I provide to the applicant, those details will be ironed out.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. I was just wondering what was happening with that street. So that's still not worked out from the sounds of it. Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, to Peyton. So I'm assuming that the city is allowing vehicle access through only Victoria Avenue or 106th Street, and also that they can provide those entrances at any length across those property lines within the minimum distances from each corner. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Yes, that is correct. Both those accesses are existing right now, and we did receive a vehicle turning diagram from the applicant that's currently under review by our development engineering team to make sure that the use on the site is going to conform and be able and meet those entrance requirements so that everything works out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Maybe Angela, you'd like to get started then, since you had some questions. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the applicants for your presentation. All right. Great development, nice building. Nice to see some redevelopment on the site. It's nice. The old building was nice too, but this looks like it's going to be definitely an upgrade. So I got that was my first question, but site design was the sidewalks. I think that would be a really important component to this development, as there isn't any sidewalks currently. And if the landscaping needs to be amended, then it would be obviously important to tie in the pedestrian experience into that sidewalk with possibly some additional trees. I know I'm just, Kate is flowing through me right now. I feel like there could be some more trees. I don't know if it's not feasible based on the growth size of those trees. But anyway, that would be my landscaping comment along there would be more trees if possible, and along Victoria Ave and 106. I feel like there's potential to squeeze in some more trees along there without blocking the actual site from passerbyers on the highway and 107th. I have to agree with staff. With always like to see, if possible, to include a roof deck amenity here. I think there seems like there is a possibility to add that maybe to the smaller level of the building that fronts on Victoria Ave, if possible. I feel like that's something to consider there. And again, agree with as much permeable paving as possible, as it sounds like it's all just pavement at the moment. So that would be great if we could add more permeable surfaces. And as far as the building goes, I didn't notice that there was sort of an address sign. Maybe I missed that part, but as far as the addressing goes for the wayfinding, it would be great to have something. It's because the access is not off the highway or off 107th. I think having the wayfinding more obvious should be considered. And green technologies, I didn't notice that there was any sort of green technologies included in the development. These buildings, I feel like they could easily have solar panels, a green roof, if not part of the green roof deck, maybe incorporate some green roof as part of that amenity space. And as far as the landscaping goes and the site design goes, the design guidelines talks about having sort of a significant landscaping feature. I feel like the property, the lot lends itself well to having something significant at the corner of 107 and the highway. I feel like there's some rock with a truck or a car on top of it right now. But if that corner, because the building currently isn't being proposed to be in a better relationship with the street, then maybe that corner could be enhanced to the degree that it is helping create some better relationship with the street. I don't know what that would look like, but I think there's an opportunity there to create some connection with that site and the highway and 107th. You're doing some the rain garden, so that's great. And I think that was all I had to add. So thank you very much. Nice project. Sorry, as far as the variances go, I was a little apprehensive about the main variance, the 16 meters from the front lot line being the highway. But if it's not feasible to move that building closer to a road right of way, then and have a better connection that way, then I'm sort of like 50-50 with it. But if it's not feasible, I suppose it's okay. The other variances I'm not too concerned with, so I'm sort of in support of this front road setback. But it's not in line with the guidelines, so I'm kind of waffling on that one. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And we'll see what everybody else has to say about it. Okay, Kevin, how about you?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Alan, and your team for your presentation. I am very, very familiar with this property. I've lived in Nanaimo all my life. I live not too far from here. It's actually walking distance, and I've driven by this site and walked by it many times. I've struggled with this ever since I received the application. I've struggled with it, and you are building a car dealership on a major highway. that is very visible, especially as you approach the site from the south side. And I decided, after going through the agenda and all the material and listening, Alan, to your presentation, and also reading your rationale, Alan, as well in your agenda, I've decided not to comment at all on the building design, form and character, and the landscape, and only really comment on the siting of the building. Some of the things you've neglected to show in your renderings are the other things, in the vehicles, the prices written on the windshields, the string banners on the light stands, the things that are typical with a car dealership that will inevitably draw attention to the cars parked on the site. And I know from experience in seeing dealerships brought before a panel that this is the corporate model, is to have the vehicles out front and to sell them and not necessarily look at where the building is and not try to sell the vehicles by the form and character of the building. And I think that might be acceptable on sites that are not as visible and high profile as this. But I feel very strongly that in this situation, I know in the past we have granted or supported variances for buildings to be set back further from the road and also away from corners. But I think you have a great opportunity to do something very special for Nanaimo by siting the building. The city, in their city comments, had recommended that you site the building either along the highway in 106th or the highway in 107th. I feel very strongly that the building should be, in driving by this along the highway very frequently, that the building should be sited very strongly into the corner of the highway in 107th. There are challenges, like you've mentioned, Alan, that how do you address the corner with the building and also the entrance, which would obviously be around the interior side of the building. And I'm very confident you can find ways to make that work. You can easily have a showroom area extending from the corner through the building to the inside of the building. You can put an L-shaped building on there with a service wing along 107th with a sales, an office along the Island Highway. You have second story you can deal with, a TAD, and from rooms as well. But and also it can create an opportunity to add an outdoor amenity space right on that corner of the building as well, with a glass curtain wall. You have a lot of opportunities there. I know every site is a challenge. You have streets running around the entire site. Your advantage is that your entrance ways off 106th and Victoria work very, very well, that you can move them along those streets. But I feel that very strongly that I think that you can do something more with this project, so that we don't just see, as we drive by, cars parked along the highway, cars parked along 107th. And I think there's opportunities here that you can do something very special for our city. And I think that corner of 107th and the Island Highway, you can create a very, very much a beacon there, so that every time people are driving north through Nanaimo, they can see something very special there. So my recommendation is that that you return with a project with the building sited into the corner of the property with no vehicles in front of the building along the Island Highway and also along 107th Street. And it's a building that very much relates to the corner of that project, and also meeting the bylaw regarding the setbacks. And we can debate the setbacks, which is the front and which is the flanking sides and the rear. But regardless, you can try to conform to those. But in my opinion, if you can tuck that building right into the corner of that property with no vehicles in front and create an outdoor amenity space, and you can still get room for everything else. You have underground parking, pretty much storage for 50 vehicles. So even if you had to remove some of the surface parking or add to reduce, you can reduce the footprint of the building by adding more office space upstairs on the second floor. So there's a lot of opportunity. I always felt when I was designing buildings that my most special projects are the ones that had the most challenges. And this could create a big challenge for you, Alan, but I think you're up for the challenge. So that's my recommendation. I'm not going to comment on the building design or the landscape because I think that would inevitably change. So that's my rant. I'm sorry, but I've struggled with it for a couple of days now, and that's how I feel about the project. So thank you for your presentation.
Thanks, Kevin.
And Alan, if you want to debate any of that or comment on that, I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to jump in. So please feel free to jump in.
Actually, maybe I should comment after everybody else has spoken. Maybe, Madam Chair. What would you
I
like?
think that's probably a better idea. Let's hear what the other people have to say, and we'll finish our round table and give you a little chance to comment back, I guess. So that would be good. So how about you, Ken? You want to add something here? Turn your mic on.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I actually don't mind the citing. I don't think we can impose some restrictions that make it make this project. It's not a signature project for the city, as far as I'm concerned. It's a car dealership, and it's a way they're in the business to sell cars. And this is a busy highway. I mean, you see the Nissan sign. I think the Nissan sign in the building is very visible, as well as the big podium they have for their at the corner. And the way the building is sited and the setbacks, I think is almost. I mean, I haven't seen a car dealership. I've seen car dealerships on busy streets where you can pull the building up to the street and make it more significant to the pedestrian, but I think in this case, it's all going to be people driving by. You're not going to have too many walk-in traffics. I've taken my car to the dealership and really you just make your way to the coffee shop and the shopping center if you're waiting for service, and the only significant crosswalk that you need is something that diagonally connects to the shopping center, because that's where people would normally go if they want to grab a bite to eat or something more than just a coffee that the service station or the service people provide. In terms of landscaping, I think what you've done is pretty appropriate, and the staff comment about, and like as most, I approve of all the variances that they've asked for. I have no. I'm not going to disapprove of any of the variances. Other than that, I think it's probably a corporate image that you want here, and probably that's the corporate trademark that dominates the design. So there's not much. I don't know how much freedom you have in terms of what you can do in terms of the elevations and the current way they've developed the building, I think, is appropriate and certainly better than the existing one, and provides certainly more space. And putting at least 50 cars underground helps with the number of cars that you will have on the lot. Other than that, I don't have any more to add, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks, Ken. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I am sympathetic to a lot of Kevin's concerns about the siting of the building, but maybe I would personally step back a little bit just because it is on a highway, so it is, and the neighbors to the east is like a pretty car-dominated shopping center. So maybe that character of dealership works here, but I do think that kind of more industrial, high-speed road kind of dealership design could be a problem for the residential on the north side. So maybe that can be thought of a bit differently on the north side, bordering the residential properties, just so it's not so the big row of cars along that side. So just going through some of the staff comments on site design, I agree with the recommendation to consider a outdoor amenity area. I think that's important for staff at the dealership, having an outdoor space to take their breaks, eat lunch. There aren't really any public parks nearby here. The lakes nearby are pretty private, not much public access. So it would be good to have some outdoor space on site for the employees to use. There were some comments about bicycle parking. I think the bicycle parking here would have the most potential for staff using, probably not so many customers. So yeah, there's some interior bike parking. I'm not sure if there was shower facilities in the design, but if there aren't, that can be a barrier to staff using cycling as their commute. Pedestrian connections on the southeast corner of the lot. There's a crosswalk across 107th, and with the current site design, that crosswalk kind of doesn't go anywhere. It just so maybe there should be a pedestrian entrance into the site from the southeast corner, so that crosswalk towards Country Club would have a purpose. Yeah, so the city comment about relocating the building to a prominent corner. Yeah, if the building isn't relocated to that more prominent corner, maybe there's a way to improve the street presence of the development without the building. So maybe there's some sort of landscape structure that could add some height closer to the street and make the street more pedestrian scaled. So I mean, right across Country Club, there's like a wooden pergola or something. Some sort of structure could maybe be considered to improve the street presence, since the building is set back so far. And let's see. Yeah, there was a staff comment about the garbage and recycling facilities and incorporating that into the building rather than having it separate in the northwest corner. I don't know what works better for a dealership, but the functioning of a dealership. But if it is in the northwest corner, I think it does say on the plan corrugated metal cladding as a screen. I don't really know what that looks like. There's no detail in the design package I was provided with showing what that metal cladding looks like. But since it's right next to residential, that enclosure needs to be decorative, respecting the neighborhood character. But yeah, if the garbage area was incorporated into the building, then that probably wouldn't be a problem. But as far as the landscape design goes, I agree that some decorative pavement should be incorporated. So maybe in some of the display parking, feature parking areas, some of that paving could be decorative, so it's not just a big sheet of asphalt over the whole site. It could be permeable, but since there's the detention tanks on site, maybe the permeability of the pavement isn't that big of a deal since the detention tank is managing the stormwater. But I think there should at least be some decorative paving in some of the parking areas. I agree with the comments about adding additional trees. Maybe some trees can be incorporated into the planted islands in the parking lot. There's not a lot of shade on the site right now, and the asphalt parking lots get really hot, especially moving towards the future and climate change. There's going to be a lot of this site's going to radiate a lot of heat into the neighborhood, so anything that we can do to add shade would be nice. So more trees is an easy way to do that. There's a lot of columnar trees which don't provide a lot of shade, so maybe trying to incorporate some trees with wider canopies to improve the shade on the site would be beneficial. Yeah, tree species. There's really only 2 species of trees proposed, since 3 of them are just cultivars of the red maple. So probably be good to have a bit more diversity there, maybe. And they're all deciduous, so I would suggest trying to incorporate some of the evergreen trees into the mix somewhere. Just in the winter time, those trees are all going to be pretty barren, so it'd be nice to have some taller greenery for the winter months. The Cornus scosa tree is one of the ones Metro Vancouver highlighted as something that might not do well with climate change and drier climate moving forward. So I would suggest maybe reviewing the tree lists and making sure that, prioritizing more like trees that can handle drier conditions that we'll be seeing in the future in this region. I can't remember, are the parking lot islands, is that a stormwater management feature? There wasn't really anything in the drawing package I received, but I think in the presentation, maybe that was mentioned. So I guess a question to
the rain gardens.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, right now it's all one species. Might be good to have a bit more diversity in there, just in case that species experiences some challenges due to some other factors. So it'd be nice to have more than one species in the rain garden. Yeah, I think that covers all my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Hillary.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and it's been really interesting to hear everyone's comments. So thank you for that. Permeable surfaces was definitely something that I was thinking of on this site, and the rain garden idea is a good one. If there's rain coming through the site that, you know, accumulates oils or gas from the vehicles and then would have a place to kind of get filtered. I'm glad there were staff comments about the lighting on the site, just making sure that it doesn't get brighter with this new project, especially for the neighboring houses. I wondered about the Portuguese laurel on the plant list. I'm pretty sure that's considered an invasive species, but Jonathan might have a more insight on that. But I did think maybe looking into that and considering adding a wider variety of species. And shade on the site, I think, is a really good point, especially for people who may be shopping for cars and looking for a little bit of relief from the heat. And I appreciated hearing Kevin's comments, because I agree that sort of driving along the highway, you get more bang for your buck seeing the building there. Not sure how much of a view of the cars you would get, but that is a pretty big potential redesign to the site. Yeah, that's pretty much all my comments. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's been interesting to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Hillary. Well, give you my summary. I had I guess 3 points that I wanted to make. My first being the same as Kevin's. I have to concur with him. I think, in a sense, you're doing a disservice to the dealership itself, because I think you'd be far more visible if the building was up in the corner as it is now. What you've done is set it back, and driving along the highway, the first thing you're going to see is a huge parking lot. And I'm sort of, I didn't realize when I was looking at the plans that you were going to try and build simultaneously here while you're still trying to operate the business. So I understand the rationale, but I would really strongly recommend that you pull that building up to the corner of the highway and 107th. I think you're losing a whole opportunity there to really showcase Nissan, which I think is part of the plan here. Instead, you're setting the building way back at the back, and the foreground is going to be your parking lot. So I have to agree with him. I think it's poorly sited where it is. I understand your rationale, but I think if there's a way you can say use the building in the back while you build in the front, something to that effect. I think if you're creative, there's probably a way that you can manage that. So that would be my first comment. The second, again, is the parking lot, which, of course, if you keep the building sited where it is, that's a huge parking lot. It's not broken up hardly at all. There's a few little bit of greenery on the islands, and it's just a huge hot surface of pavement. And again, I think a really unfortunate design choice. And I know that's sort of part and parcel of car dealerships, but I've seen a lot of dealerships come through this committee since I've been on it, and a lot more thoughtful ideas come forward in terms of how to handle that space, pushing some of the more functional, the staff parking, all that stuff at the back, just having a few cars showcased at the front, and then having your extra cars in the back. There's lots of different choices there. So I think some thought has to be put into that parking lot and how to reduce it. And I guess, again, if you resite the building, that might take care of part of that. You'll still have parking in the back. But I'd also like to see way more trees and way more landscaping on that, and permeable paving as well. So it's not just such a piece of tarmac. And my third comment, again, is you have a kind of unusual landscaping opportunity here. Right now, there's not a lot of landscaping around this building. And I think your proposal that you've put here is great, like you're adding trees and so on. But again, I'll sort of reinforce the comments we've already had. I think more trees. And I'm particularly concerned about the side on Victoria, because you're actually you're running alongside, you're across the street from a residential area. And when I looked on the map and looked at the site, I realized all those houses, that's actually their front yard, not their backyard. So it's not a laneway. So I think to mitigate that and make your site even better and improve along that street, some sort of heavy hedge. Like when I looked at the landscape plan, it looked to me like there's just grasses and that sort of thing that you've put along that road, as well as the trees. And I would like to see a robust hedge or something that would grow up and maybe shield the residents when they look out their front window, so they're not looking at a parking lot or a back of a building or a Nissan dealership, because I don't think they're the people you're advertising to necessarily. So if the city does some work on that road, and you guys do a lot of the landscaping, it could make that a much nicer street for the residents who live right behind. Because they also have to put up with, I'm assuming, a fair amount of traffic of cars being brought in, and I'm assuming big tractor trailers with cars on them. So there would be some, they're having to deal with sort of the fact that they're facing a business like yours. So I think that would help. So those three points I feel quite strongly about, and I'm with Kevin in terms of I don't really support the variance for the setback, because I think there's options to change that and do it differently. But maybe we can open the floor now and allow the applicants to have a few comments and respond to these comments, and then if the panel wants to add some more comments. So go ahead to the applicant.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. I can appreciate the concerns that you and Kevin have about the location of the building. The client is actually making a huge investment on this property in this area. And due to the fact that they do have an existing dealership building where you would like them to locate the new building, it makes it very difficult for them from a business point of view, because they're going to be down for at least 18 months to 24 months without a building if we went that route. We're looking at building underground parking, because there is the need to add more storage space for their inventory, because with the capacity of even the whole block that they own, they do require more. It's not cheap to build underground parking, and to I guess try to change the size of the footprint to create more parking on the surface just doesn't work for them, because functionally it doesn't work. You need certain amount of showroom space for their use. You need certain amount of space for servicing. Service drive-throughs and bays. So those are all aspects of designing a car dealership and making it function properly. If the site was clear and empty, we probably would have put the building in a different location. But due to the fact that there is an existing building on site, that's the main reason why we tried to, I guess, set the building in a location that that deals with the highway, deals with Victoria, and deals with the other side streets. As far as, I guess, permanent pavers and the like, with rain gardens, etc., the rain gardens actually will take the water, and it allows you to use those areas as opposed to having permeable pavers. Half of the building or half of the site is actually going to be underground parking as well, so there's no permeability in those areas. And with the additional landscaping that we're putting around the site, I think that it'll give more permeability, as well as the detention ponds that Civil has created meets all the infiltration and flows and that's required by engineering. As far as having areas for people to enjoy and sit around, nobody wants to sit around a highway. It's very difficult. I would rather have, if I was there and if I was a staff member, I'd rather go across the street to the mall on my lunch hour or whatever, rather than sitting in the outside where you've got traffic going at 80 kilometers an hour plus along the highway. It's a very fast traffic oriented street, that Island Highway, and I think that if it was a pedestrian friendly street, all the more to bring buildings closer to the street, because it's more pedestrian friendly. This is very auto-centric. And I think that with the building and with the design that we have there, we're taking all that into consideration as we're bringing in this proposal. So I'd like to agree to disagree on certain aspects with yourselves, and thank you for your comments.
Great, thanks. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I would just relay to Alan that less than 50 yards away from the site, there's the original Joe's restaurant, and they have an outdoor patio that's between the building and the highway, and it's always busy year round. They have heaters out there. And so outdoor amenity spaces related to corners obviously are much more popular in urban settings, maybe not as much obviously in rural settings. But I think there's a way that the building, if it is in fact going to be sited in the corner, that you could have something that looks a lot nicer than a car on an elevated steel frame with a ramp going up to it, which is very typical of what they do on corners. Sitting up on 8 feet off the ground on this ugly steel frame, I'd much rather see an outdoor amenity space. Thank you.
And just one comment, Kevin, I don't want to argue, but Original Joe's is a totally different entity because that patio is a money generator versus if you put a patio in for the car dealership, it's not really something that works with a car dealership. It works great with Original Joe's.
Okay. Any other panel members? John?
Yeah, so I can confirm Portuguese laurel is considered invasive in Nanaimo, so thanks for catching that, Hillary. So yeah, consider changing that species out. Yeah, as far as like clarifying permeable pavers, yeah, considering the site conditions, I wouldn't say permeable pavers, but I do think decorative paving is important. So yeah, it's just a big sheet of asphalt right now. So breaking some of that up with decorative paving, even if it's impermeable, would be an improvement. As far as the outdoor amenity space goes, if it's too noisy, then put it on the residential side of the building, and then it'll be sheltered. So yeah, I don't think that's a good reason to not have outdoor amenity space. As far as a money generator, yeah, there's not customers being served on the outdoor amenity space, but it's good for the employees and their mental health having an outdoor space to use during their breaks, since there's no other outdoor spaces in this area for employees to use within walking. So yeah, healthy employees is a good money generator maybe for the business. So just want to stay firm on those recommendations.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Anybody else want to add something here? The panel? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. I would just like to concur with the amenity space, whether it's on the highway side or the residential side. I think it is very important to consider that. I had recommended a roof deck on the residential side, the low section of the building, if it was feasible. And I do think that would be a great amenity space and shielded from the highway noise, and create some animation on that street side if there's a sidewalk, and it's nice to see action and animation along that street for the residences as well, rather than just like a plain wall. So I think that would be actually a lovely addition to the site. And I also just wanted to express that I do side on Marie and Kevin's idea of bringing the building closer to one of the streets, one of the main streets, as it is in line with the guidelines. And although it seems in character with the adjacent shopping mall sea of parking, that was the exact point of the design guidelines was to try and avoid a continuation of sea of parking lot. So if there's an opportunity, I know it's very challenging because you want to keep that building, but it would be, I think, a benefit to the community to somehow bring that building closer to one of the main streets. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Angela. Okay, well, I've got quite a few recommendations here, so maybe we'll go through them, and we'll start with that. Consider resiting the building to the corner of the highway and the 106 or 107th. Anybody want to remind me?
Well, my preference was 107th. It could be either 106 or 107th, but in my opinion, the most prominent corner as you drive by is the 107th corner.
Is that the one? Is that the one that you, when you're going north, you pass first?
Yeah, you would see it. You would see it first as you pass the mall.
Which makes sense when you're driving on the right-hand side of the road. It just seems to be the one you see first. Yeah. So consider resiting the building to the corner of the highway and 107th. You said. Okay.
Yeah, and as part of that, I feel that in the staff comments, and I agree with, is that in the design guidelines for the city of Nanaimo, that no parking should be between the building and the street. And I think that should be for both the Island Highway side and also the 107th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how Angela and you agree or anybody else agrees on that, but I feel that the building should be the priority on the priority of the site. And I know the corporate model for these car dealerships is, no, we want to have our cars out front, just like a jewelry store, where here's our product, here's our prices on them, and this is what we want people to see. And I think as a city, we should encourage and insist that the building should be the priority for the public, not the vehicles. So you want to go in and see them. So that's just my...
Suggesting not even a row of display cars.
Yeah, sorry, that's just it. It's having a row of display cars there with price tags and the ribbons and the triangular banners from all the street lights and stuff hanging across them. I think that's what we should try to encourage against. I think we should have the building as a feature, and we drive by all these. They're allowed to do that within the temporary sign bylaws and things. They're allowed to put up banners on the light posts and stuff. And if there's nothing there, if there's a building there, they can't do it. So.
Yeah, but other car dealerships are lining their cars up front, and we've approved new buildings with their cars in the front too.
Yeah, not along major highways though. This is one of the few that's right along a major feature highway, and that's one of the reasons why I'm considering this.
All right, so consider resiting the building to the corner of Highway and 107th and moving the parking to the back of the building. Does that sound okay? And to the rest of the community?
Yes, and conforming to the city guidelines regarding vehicles in between the building and the roads.
Okay.
And sorry, Madam Chair, just to remind everybody, if this is the motion, we all get a vote on this. So if you don't feel strongly with that, you can vote against it. If it gets defeated, you can remove it. I'm not going to remove it, but if anybody else can remove it, they can remove it, and we can vote again.
Right. Okay.
I'd just like to raise a point, Madam Chair. You know, we recently reviewed a car dealership in the corner of, I think it was at Bowen Road and Island Highway.
Mm-hmm.
All the other car dealerships were.
Yep.
And at that time, none of this was brought up, and that was a more prominent location than this one. I mean, that's a really prominent location where they were planning to build a building with cars in front, as I recall. And
they're having, they're having no cars, or very little, if not no cars, on the corner. It's just going to be the building, and they're going to have expensive cars. They don't want them outside.
Yeah, and that's also a district too with lots of car dealerships. So it's off
That's right.
the highway. I think that was Kevin's point. Is this one's on the highway?
This one's on the highway where you drive by so fast, as the architect said. You know, you glance at it and you'll see the Nissan sign. You won't recognize the building. You don't see the cars. You're just driving by, and I think you're forcing something onto a project that is really not necessary. I mean, you're really putting handcuffs on them if you're forcing them to, especially to tear down an existing building. In fact, I know the Honda dealership, for example, built a new building, and they're still stuck in. They were lucky enough to get a little building behind their area to operate from, and have a service area back there. But their building, I understand, it's delayed another 4 or 5 months just because of they can't get workers to finish it. So they're probably 2 years out of their building site, and the loss of revenue must be, I would think, pretty significant when you don't get people coming in off the street, or no showroom, anything like that. So anyways.
Well, Ken, I would disagree. I have a feeling, even though they're relocating the building, that existing building will be torn down. Otherwise, they're building on one location. The building's on the other.
I agree with you.
They would have no room to park any vehicles to sell on the site if there's 2 buildings on the site. So
I agree with you, Kevin. All I'm saying is that you're really putting a restriction on them to build close to 107th where the existing building is, without letting them operate, the existing operation, and then building at the backside, which makes sense. Maybe you have to bring it closer to the street, but at least you give them the opportunity to operate their business while they're, investing a significant amount of money.
I think I'm offering them more opportunity to run their business, because the existing building will be knocked down because they need some place to put their cars while the new building's being built, and they'll put up portable trailers like Honda did on Bowen Road. So I think there's no way they're going to have the existing building up and build the new building, and then when the new building's done, knock down the old building, because there'd only be room for a handful of cars to sell on the site. So
okay, I'm gonna interrupt here as chair, and I think we just have to remember what we're here for. The city has established design guidelines for a purpose, to help make the city, to develop a good-looking city. They've set up these guidelines, and part of our job is to check over these designs to see that they're meeting that. And I think Kevin's comment about the reciting the building is in line with those design guidelines, and that's the important thing. We can recommend that those be respected and followed, and how the owners and the developers decide to handle that, and what construction problems they have, that's really beyond our purview here. So I think all we can do is really put in our comments about how we feel about that. And Ken, again, as Kevin reminded us, you can vote against the recommendations. So we'll put this to a vote after we get them outlined here. So if you don't mind, I think I'll continue going through our recommendations. So there's that, number 1. Number 2, review tree list and incorporate more shade trees, evergreen trees, and trees suitable to climate change, or to the climate. Anything else that should be added on that in terms of the trees?
Through the chair?
Yeah.
Both Jonathan and I both had our hand up. I just wanted to add, consider to ensure native species are used when possible.
Okay.
And if Jonathan doesn't mention it, also that sidewalk that goes to nowhere, to incorporate some kind of a pedestrian access linkage along 107th as part of the landscaping plan.
Okay, so say that again. Sorry, I was finishing up the last one. So do something with, sorry, say that again.
To incorporate the pedestrian connection with the crosswalk along the stormwater management area of 107th.
Okay.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
to link up to Victoria Ave.
To Victoria. Okay. Good. All right. And
If members agree.
yeah, to incorporate pedestrian connection with the storm management system along 107th to link up with Victoria Avenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess just yeah, creating a pedestrian connection to the existing crosswalk across 107th Ave, maybe.
Create a pedestrian connection.
Or a pedestrian entrance into the site from the crosswalk across 107.
From the crosswalk along where?
Across 107.
Across. Okay. So is that to replace the one that, is that replacing or adding to what Angela suggested?
I guess it's just
Clarifying it.
just clarifying it, yeah.
Okay. We'll go with that then. Let's create a pedestrian entrance into the site from the crosswalk from 107th.
Sorry, could I just interrupt?
Yep.
I don't know that that is something that the developers would like to have, is the pedestrian connection going right into the site. But maybe we could just suggest both options and the developer could discuss that with staff, maybe. Is that?
Still not clear on what I should say there though, so.
So consider options of connection, pedestrian connection from the crosswalk to either Victoria Ave or into the site.
Okay, we'll give that a try. I don't think we have to be too specific, but that sounds, consider options for pedestrian connection from Victoria and into the site. It could be a number of ways. Okay, and then Jonathan, somebody considered adding diversity to the rain garden. Consider adding permeable or patterned paving to the parking lot. Consider making the wayfinding from the highway more obvious. Consider green options such as solar panels or a green roof. Design guidelines suggest a significant landscaping feature on the corner of the highway, I believe it was, on 107th on 107th.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that it has to be on 107th, but it does suggest a significant landscape feature that may include natural elements to be included on one of the corners, depending on how the design ends up.
Okay. It's nice and clear. Okay, and consider. I think we've got that. And maybe a bit more here. Consider incorporating the garbage and recycling into the building or ensure the enclosure fits the character of the building. And we got landscape paving. Okay. Ensure lighting respects the residential neighborhood. ensure that lighting doesn't intrude upon the residential neighborhood. Okay, so that's 12. No, I don't think that's 12 because I've got an extra one in there. 11 recommendations. You want me to go through them again?
Yeah.
Okay. So consider resiting the building to the corner of the highway and 107th and moving the parking to the back of the building as per city design guidelines. Review the tree list and incorporate more shade trees, evergreen trees, and trees suitable to the climate. Ensure native species be used where possible. Consider options for pedestrian connection from Victoria and into the site. Add diversity to the rain garden. Consider adding a roof deck amenity or outdoor amenity area. Consider adding permeable paving or pattern paving to the parking lot. Consider making the wayfinding from the highway more obvious. Consider green options such as solar panels or green roof. Design guidelines suggest a significant landscaping feature that may include natural elements to be included on one of the corners. Consider incorporating garbage and recycling into the building or ensure the enclosure fits the character of the building. Ensure that lighting does not intrude upon the residential neighborhood. Yes, Angela? Mm-hmm.
Jonathan had mentioned it, and it was something I meant to mention as well, but to consider adding the addition of washrooms for staff.
Or like shower change room.
Oh, sorry, that's what I mean. Shower change room areas. And if I may,
Go ahead.
just that pedestrian connection.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it was clear, but there's a crosswalk that goes along Island Highway at the end of 107th.
Okay.
And that's where Jonathan and I were mentioning about having that connection.
From Victoria and the crosswalk.
So it would lead to somewhere. It just right now it leads to the corner of the highway and 107th.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to go somewhere, either 107th or like up 107th to Victoria Ave or into the site.
Okay, but are you suggesting this is one recommendation, or is that a second one?
One recommendation.
Okay, so
I just think the way it was written, the way you said it,
okay.
I'm not sure that was clear, but anyway.
Okay, I'll just read it to you and you can correct it then. So consider options for pedestrian connection from Victoria and the crosswalk at 107th and into the site.
From the highway and 107th
From,
to Victoria Ave. Or into the site.
Okay, makes any more sense now. Consider options for pedestrian connections from from the crosswalk from the highway and 107th to Victoria Avenue or into the site.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so that leaves us with 12 recommendations now. Sorry.
Or I think, should we do a recommendation regarding the invasive species, changing that?
I think I added that, ensure native species.
Well,
Is that
not all, no, I think that's different.
okay?
Just because, yeah, it doesn't have to be native to not be
Consider
invasive.
alternate. How do you want to phrase that?
I guess avoid using invasive plant species. Or consider removing invasive plant species. And I maybe would, for this development, remove the reference to native plants just because like a lot of native species aren't really suited for a parking lot kind of environment. Like there aren't really any native trees that would do well here. So I don't think asking for native species specifically should be part of the recommendation, but definitely species that are adapted for climate change and not invasive.
Okay, so review the tree list, incorporate more shade trees, evergreen trees, and trees suitable to the climate and the climate change. And avoid, what did you say? Avoid,
Invasive. Avoid invasive.
avoid. Okay. All right, and in terms of support for the variances then, so we've got our recommendations. There's still 12, I think, here.
I support the height variance.
Okay. So support the height variance, but not the, there's 3 variances actually. So the parking becomes the issue too. So just the
Yeah,
height.
the parking in front of the building and the setback are the ones that I would not be supporting. Obviously, it goes against what we're proposing in one of our recommendations.
So do you want to make a motion to that point and have a vote on it and see if panel members?
Yeah, I will make a motion then, and because the first recommendation is so significant that will affect the landscape concept and the building design, my motion would be that the applicant return with an amended application incorporating the recommendations that you have mentioned, and also that we support the height variance.
We have a seconder from the group for that. Angela will second. How many all in favor? 1, 2, 3. You're not in favor, Angela? 4. Ken and Hillary doesn't vote. Ken, you're
Not favor.
You're not in favor. Okay, so it passes with 4 in favor and 1 opposed. So I think we can go forward with that. All right. So thank you to the applicants for bringing in your proposal. And at this point, we'll see where it goes from here with the city staff. But we'd be happy to have you back with a different plan from the looks of it. So we'll see what happens here. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. So we don't have any other business this evening. And we can have a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Motion